Early China is a particularly enigmatic period of history, a world away from the bustling commerce and imperial opulence of later centuries. During this era, life was a tapestry of philosophical schools, silent contemplations, and intimate rituals. As such, the initial use of tea was deeply intertwined with these practices, existing not merely as a beverage, but as a tool for health and a conduit to focus the mind. In fact, during these early centuries, the very concept of tea as a leisure drink was non-existent. Instead, tea was viewed primarily as a tonic, a purifying agent used not for enjoyment, but for cleansing the body and sharpening the mind. This perspective was heavily influenced by the teachings of Shen Nangben Caojing, also known as the Divine Farmer's Materia Medica, an ancient text that laid the foundation for traditional Chinese medicine. The central figure here is Shen Nang, the Divine Farmer, a mythical yet revered alchemist-like figure who is credited with discovering the medicinal properties of various plants, including the now famous camellia. One fateful day, while Shen Nang was experimenting with various herbal infusions, he accidentally allowed some leaves to steep in hot water, and the moment he lifted the cup, the aroma of the accidentally steeped leaves rose in a soft, vaporous spiral. This was the immediate, transformative moment. The Divine Farmer felt an immediate sense of clarity, a gentle lift of the spirit he had not encountered in the hundreds of herbs he meticulously catalogued. The liquid was clean, subtly bitter, yet finishing with an inviting, almost inexplicable sweetness, a taste that spoke not of medicine, but of gentle awakening. He named the effect Cha, derived from the character meaning to check or to investigate, for the way it checked the toxins in his body and investigated the corners of his mind. And so began the quiet integration of this new discovery into the broader context of traditional medicine. In the following centuries, tea started to be recommended alongside other herbal remedies for its ability to purify and energize the body. It was used to combat lethargy, aid digestion, and even to sober the mind after bouts of rice wine consumption. This application of tea is well documented in historical records like the Lushi, a comprehensive text covering various aspects of ancient Chinese society. Within its vast compendium, tea finds its place as a suggested remedy for those seeking to alleviate the heavy burdens of intoxication. Specifically, the text recommends a potent infusion made by steeping tea leaves with ginger, a practice that aimed to expedite the process of clearing the body of alcohol. This method not only highlights an early use of tea for detoxification, but also offers a glimpse into the practical wisdom embedded within ancient Chinese culture. By combining tea with ginger, two distinct yet complementary properties were brought together. Ginger, with its inherent warmth and ability to stimulate circulation, facilitated the quickening of bodily processes, aiding in the metabolism of alcohol. Tea, on the other hand, offered its own set of detoxifying properties, further enhancing the cleansing effect. Together, they formed a potent, time-tested solution for a common concern, demonstrating the practical applications of traditional knowledge in everyday life. It wasn't just about eliminating intoxication, though. Tea's role in daily life extended to every facet of existence during this era. For instance, during the long, silent epochs of the Zhou dynasty, tea was prescribed to aid digestion, to sober the mind after rice wine, and most importantly, to fight lethargy. During long sessions of contemplation, the act of preparing tea was itself a ritual, a slow, deliberate process that mirrored the meticulous attention demanded by philosophy and art. In a society where mental clarity and physical discipline were highly valued, tea became more than a beverage. It transformed into a tool, a means to achieve a state of heightened awareness and focus. This role of tea in promoting clarity and focus found particular resonance among those who dedicated their lives to intellectual pursuits and spiritual practices. For instance, the Confucian scholars, with their emphasis on self-cultivation and rigorous study, recognized the value of tea in maintaining mental acuity. Similarly, Taoist practitioners, with their focus on achieving a state of enlightenment through meditation and introspection, also integrated tea into their daily routines. In both cases, tea was not merely consumed. It was experienced as a catalyst for deeper understanding and inner peace. The preparation of tea during this period was far from the delicate art form it would later become. It was a rustic affair, a thick, hearty soup made by boiling the fresh leaves with rice, ginger, salt, and even orange peel. The resulting brew was powerful, designed to fortify the body and steady the mind, not to tantalize the palate. Yet despite its robustness, it held within it the essence of what was to come. The very act of sharing this unrefined tea was a gesture of deep respect and trust. To offer someone a bowl of this earthy, unadulterated tea was to wish for their health and well-being, a silent prayer brewed into every drop. This early form of tea, far from being a mere beverage, was a silent partner in the pursuit of wisdom, a steadfast companion in the journey towards self-realization. As centuries passed, tea evolved from being a rustic mountain herb to a beverage enjoyed across social strata. However, it was during the Tang dynasty, roughly between the years 618 and 907 CE, that tea truly came into its own. The Tang dynasty was a golden age in Chinese history, a period marked by economic prosperity, cultural vibrancy, and an unprecedented appreciation for the arts. It was during this era that the refined aestheticism that tea would become known for started to take shape. The process of tea preparation became an art form, each step executed with a level of precision and grace that mirrored the finest poetry or calligraphy of the time. Central to this evolution was the introduction of the tea utensils, the finery that transformed the simple act of making tea into a meditative experience. Among these, the zisha, or purple sandpots, crafted from the distinctive reddish clay found near Yixing, emerged as a particular favorite. These pots, with their elegant design and superior insulation properties, became the vessels of choice for brewing and serving tea, elevating the entire ritual to a new level of sophistication. The choice of the zisha pot signified not just an appreciation for aesthetics, but an understanding of the nuanced effects this particular type of clay had on the tea itself. This understanding was not merely aesthetic, it was functional. The zisha clay was believed to interact with the tea in a way that enhanced its flavor and aroma, making it an integral part of the brewing process. Consequently, the ownership of a fine zisha pot became a status symbol, a silent testament to one's refinement and understanding of the subtleties of tea culture. The popularity of zisha during the Tang dynasty was so profound that entire kilns were dedicated to producing these exquisite teapots. The designs varied, each telling a silent story through its curves and contours. Some were simple, allowing the natural clay to speak for itself. Others were more elaborate, featuring intricate designs inspired by nature or everyday life. However, perhaps the most significant contribution to the Tang dynasty tea culture was the introduction of the tea ceremony, a series of precise movements and gestures designed to honor the tea and the occasion. This was more than just a method of preparation. It was a philosophy, a silent conversation between the hosts and the guest, and between the maker and the moment. At the heart of this ceremony was the concept of harmony, not just in the final product, but in every step leading up to it. The measured pour, the careful balance of water and leaves, the very placement of the pot and cups, all contributed to this harmony, creating a symphony of coordinated actions that resonated with the broader philosophies of the time. The Tang dynasty tea ceremony did not exist in isolation. It was deeply entwined with the prevailing cultural ethos, reflecting and reinforcing the values of harmony, balance, and respect that were central to Chinese thought. For instance, the Confucian emphasis on propriety and ritual was evident in the precise steps of the ceremony. Similarly, the Taoist idea of achieving a state of oneness with nature was reflected in the reverence for the tea plant and the meditative quality of the entire experience. The evolution of tea during the Tang dynasty was nothing short of remarkable. From its humble beginnings as a medicinal herb to its current form as a refined cultural icon, tea had come a long way. Yet despite its elevated status, tea remained rooted in its original purpose, a silent partner in contemplation, a companion in moments of solitude, a catalyst for clarity, a drink that did not just quench thirst, but awakened the senses and the spirit. This enduring essence of tea, its ability to transcend time and elevate the ordinary to the extraordinary, is what continues to captivate tea lovers across the world today. The quietest revolution is one that happens in the mind, and no other has had such a profound impact on me as my journey with tea. How the leaf transforms from raw material to elixir, captured in a single perfect moment. There's a beauty in this transition that's both humbling and inspiring. We traveled back to the Temps dynasty, where this transformation reached new heights. We explore how tea went from a regional tonic to an imperial obsession and, ultimately, a national art form. We see how the seemingly mundane act of brewing tea became a conduit to higher states of consciousness. And we learn about the unsung hero of this revolution, a man whose name might not ring a bell, but whose contributions changed the course of tea history forever. The Temps dynasty stands as a golden era in Chinese history, a time when the empire stretched from sea to shining sea, embracing diversity and encouraging innovation. Within this melting pot, tea found its champion, a humble scholar named Lu Yu. Born into an aristocratic family in the mid-700s, his life took an unexpected turn when his father was implicated in a failed rebellion. As a result, young Lu Yu, along with his mother and sister, found himself orphaned and alone in the bustling capital of Chang'an. Despite the upheaval, Lu Yu's thirst for knowledge remained. He immersed himself in Confucian texts, taking on menial jobs to support himself while he studied. But fate had another path in store for him. One day, while perusing a local market, Lu Yu stumbled upon a vendor selling tea. Something about the aromatic steam rising from the vendor's humble wares captivated his attention. Intrigued, Lu Yu decided to purchase some tea, hoping to replicate the experience at home. However, much to his dismay, the results were far from satisfactory. The water boiled, the leaves steeped, but the essence of the market, the very soul of that first taste, eluded him. Determined to bridge this gap, Lu Yu embarked on a quest. He traveled across China, tracing the origins of the tea he had so loved from afar. His journey took him through rugged mountains and tranquil valleys, each step deepening his understanding of tea cultivation and production. He documented everything: the different types of tea, their unique properties, and how they responded to various brewing techniques. This wasn't just a leisurely tour. This was a pilgrimage. Louis's travels culminated in the quiet town of Yuan. Here amidst the verdant hills, he discovered the secret behind the tea's elusive charm. The key, he realized, lay not in the tea leaves themselves, but in the subtle art of their preparation. He returned home, this time with a refined purpose. Lu Yu dedicated his life to tea, sharing his newfound wisdom with all who sought his teachings. His influence was profound. He showed people that tea wasn't just a simple beverage, but a nuanced, intricate practice. Each step in the preparation, from grinding to sifting to brewing, was an opportunity for mindfulness, a chance to connect with nature's bounty in a deeply personal way. In the year 760 AD, Lu Yu published his magnum opus, the Chajing, or Classic of Tea. This groundbreaking work was the world's first comprehensive guide to tea. Its 93 chapters covered every aspect of tea, from planting and processing to brewing and health benefits. The book was a sensation. It became the go-to resource for tea enthusiasts and practitioners alike. And though it's been lost to history, its impact remains, forming the bedrock of traditional Chinese tea culture. Lu Yu didn't just write about tea. He lived it. He established the first tea plantation near the capital, introduced new tea varieties, and standardized brewing methods. He even designed the quintessential tea garden, a serene space meant to foster tranquility and self-reflection. Most importantly, he elevated tea to a philosophy, emphasizing the harmony between humanity and nature and the importance of balance and moderation in life. The Tempsi emperors were quick to notice the growing popularity of tea and its profound effect on their subjects. Emperor Shenzong, known for his love of poetry and aesthetics, became an ardent tea enthusiast. He appointed Lu Yu as his official tea taster, a position that cemented tea's place in the imperial court. Imagine the scene. You are in the heart of the Temps dynasty, seated in the emperor's private tea room. Sunlight streams through the paper windows, illuminating fine clouds of vapor rising from your cup. The air is thick with the aroma of fresh jasmine. Before you stands Lu Yu, the esteemed tea master, his movements as graceful as those of a dancer, each step precise, each gesture deliberate. He presents you with a tea, not merely a beverage, but a moment, a pause in the chaos of the imperial court. In this tranquil space, you are not just the emperor, you are a student of tea, observing, learning, experiencing. As the warm liquid touches your lips, you taste not just tea, but history. The culmination of centuries of tradition and the quiet revolution led by Lu Yu. It was during this era that the most common form of tea emerged, the compressed brick. These robust cakes of tea were not just a convenient way to transport tea leaves, but also a reflection of the Tang dynasty's opulence and sophistication. Picture vast warehouses filled with these tea bricks, each one stamped with imperial seals or adorned with intricate carvings, depicting everything from mythical beasts to scenes from daily life. These bricks were more than just tea. They were a status symbol, a testament to the Tang dynasty's prosperity and power. They were even used as a form of currency, exchanged for silk, spices, and even gold. This heavy brick tea was produced primarily in the south, where the climate was favorable for tea cultivation. The process was laborious, involving steaming, pulverizing, and pressing the leaves into hard molds, followed by slow baking to preserve them. Once cooled, these solid blocks were ready to be shipped across the empire. Now let us walk together through the steps required to brew this unique tea. Before us lies a weathered slab of brick tea, its surface marked with the passage of time. With a sharp knife, we break off a piece, revealing the tightly compressed leaves within. Our first step is roasting. Placing our piece in a heat-resistant bowl, we gently coax it over a low flame, feeling the warmth as it softens the tea's texture. Next comes grinding, where we transform the roasted tea into a fine powder using a traditional stone mill. The rhythmic grinding is not just a means to an end. It's a meditative practice, a way to connect with the essence of the tea. Now the crucial moment. Whisking. Using a bamboo whisk and a ceramic bowl, we vigorously blend the tea powder in hot water, creating a frothy concoction that is the heart of our brew. Finally, we serve the tea, pouring it into small cups, each one holding not just a beverage, but a legacy of tradition and the spirit of the Tang dynasty. Now, picture this. The year is 747. You are gathered in a traditional Chinese house, sunlight streaming in through ornate windows. Around you sit friends and family, all gathered to share in the simple yet profound ritual of tea drinking. The air is filled with the aroma of freshly brewed tea, mingling with the soft murmur of conversation. The Tang dynasty tea room was more than just a place to serve tea. It was a space for contemplation, a silent sanctuary where the hustle and bustle of everyday life faded away. The walls were often adorned with calligraphy and paintings, serving as constant reminders of the beauty and subtlety that tea represented. Incense burned softly, adding another dimension to the experience, a subtle, calming fragrance that elevated the senses. The very design of the tea set was a reflection of the Tang dynasty's aesthetic sensibilities, with delicate porcelain cups and saucers complementing the rich colors and textures of the tea itself. In the center of it all is the tea table, an unassuming yet pivotal part of the tea room's design. Its flat surface not only held the tea set, but also served as a canvas for the quiet drama of tea making. Each movement around the table was deliberate, a silent dance between the host and the guests. The host, with practiced grace, prepares the tea, each step imbued with years of tradition. The guests, in turn, observe, appreciating the artistry of the tea-making process and the serenity it brings. The silence in the tea room was not awkward. It was comforting, allowing for introspection and deeper conversations when words were shared. It was a silence that invited peace, a quietude that echoed the tranquility of the tea itself. And as the tea was served, the room filled not just with the aroma of the brew, but also with the spirit of the Tang dynasty, a spirit of refinement, balance, and harmony. The tea ceremony, with its intricate steps and quiet dignity, mirrored the values of this golden age. Each pour, each sip, was a reminder of the philosophy that had become synonymous with Chinese tea culture. The story of tea is not just about a beverage. It's a cultural odyssey. From its humble beginnings to its imperial rise, tea has woven itself into the fabric of society, touching lives and inspiring traditions across the ages. In part 1 of this series, we met Shenong, the divine farmer who discovered tea and brought it back to humanity. In part 2, we saw how the Tang dynasty wove tea into the fabric of everyday life, making it an essential part of hospitality, poetry, and spirituality. Now in part 3, we will explore how the Song dynasty ushered in the golden age of whisked tea, refining the Tang ritual into an elegant, competitive art form. We'll also look at the origins of pu'er tea, its production process and role as a commodity on the ancient tea-horse road. The Song dynasty is best remembered for its refinement, its urban landscapes, its Neo-Confucian philosophy, and its military innovations. However, what sets it apart in the history of tea is how it elevated the Temps dynasty SMP tea ceremony into a complex, competitive practice that has endured through millennia. The heart of this evolution was the Song dynasty scholar, known as the literati, a class of educated, elite men who dominated the government, arts, and culture. And no activity was more central to their lives than drinking tea. The literati were well versed in poetry, calligraphy, painting, and music. They collected beautiful objects, and they appreciated simplicity, balance, and elegance. It was this mentality that elevated tea from a humble drink into an art form. The Song dynasty saw the rise of fine powdered tea. Unlike the brick tea common in earlier times, which was made from compressed leaves meant for long storage and transport, powdered tea was a fresh, delicate product, finely ground and whisked into a foamy brew. This innovation is considered the direct ancestor of modern Japanese In a Song dynasty scroll, we see the famous literati, Sudongpo, carefully whisking his tea. His movements are slow and deliberate, creating a cloud of fine spray that is as much an art as the final taste. According to ancient texts, the ideal color for this froth was like that of bright jade, and achieving it required skill, patience, and the finest quality leaves. The most prized teas came from the Gyeongsang province, specifically the mountainous regions near the West Lake and Han. The unique terroir, producing a tea that yielded the perfect balance between color, fragrance, and flavor. So exquisite was this tea that special gardens were created around Hangzhou, just for its cultivation. The most famous being the famous 18th century Lingyan Temple, where monks tended not only to the spiritual needs of travelers, but also provided them with an opportunity to savor the finest tea in the empire. While the Song dynasty literati held tea tastings and appreciation ceremonies, the emperors and their guests enjoyed grander, more elaborate displays. The imperial tea master, an esteemed position akin to a royal chef today, would prepare tea for official ceremonies and banquets. For these occasions, larger quantities of tea were needed, and special tools were developed to meet the demand. A new type of tea canister called the Tedest box emerged, allowing for easy scooping of the fine powder, an innovation that changed the very way tea was measured and doled out. At court, drinking tea was not just a quiet, personal affair, but an event full of pageantry, aesthetics, and sometimes even political undertones. During the Emperor's Day celebrations, according to historical records, 8 imperial maids would carry 8 different types of fragrant tea on silver trays before the emperor, each with its own dedicated superheated iron pot. These fragrant offerings included floral notes of honeysuckle, jasmine, and chrysanthemum, as well as the robust, earthy tones of green tea and the comforting sweetness of aged pu'er. Each pour was a testament to the Song dynasty's wealth, refinement, and mastery over the tea ceremony. Now, while the Song dynasty emperors were enjoying the finest teas and hosting lavish ceremonies, another kind of commerce was quietly unfolding far from the polished halls of the court, deep in the mountains of Yunnan and Sichuan provinces and into Tibet. A brutal network of mountain trails wound through dense bamboo groves, across icy passes, and over sheer cliffs. This route would come to be known as the Tea Horse Road, a term coined by a Scottish explorer in the 19th century. Though the trade it describes dates back over 1,000 years. The road was never a single, continuous route, but rather a series of smaller paths and trails that formed a kind of spiderweb connecting far-flung communities. At the heart of this trade was the tea brick, a dense, compact form of tea that was durable enough to withstand the arduous journey. The tea leaves were first steamed, then pounded and compressed into solid bricks, weighing up to 100 pounds. These bricks could last for years, resisting the elements and retaining their aroma and flavor. But they were not just thrown over shoulders and marched across the rugged terrain. The transportation of these bricks involved a labor-intensive process. Laborers, many of them ethnic minorities from the region, carried the bricks across the mountains, their passage marked only by the rhythmic shuffle of their feet, the jingle of their bells, and the mist-laden breath of their yaks and mules. The trade was conducted in hushed tones, hence the name whispered commerce, with deals struck in quiet corners and transactions agreed upon with subtle gestures. Porters relied on a code of conduct and unspoken understanding to ensure the safe passage of their valuable cargo. Theirs was a world away from the bustling marketplaces and haggling merchants of the Silk Road. To understand the Tea-Horse Road, one must first picture the world in which it existed. A time when large-scale organized retail was unheard of. Purchases were largely done in person, often in small, independent shops. The internet, credit cards, and online payment systems were non-existent. Bartering in precious metals like gold and silver were popular means of exchange. The Tea-Horse Road thrived due to the Song dynasty's particular obsession with tea. The growing popularity of powdered tea among the literati in the imperial court led to increased demand. As tea gardens flourished around Hangzhou, the need for an efficient way to move this delicate commodity across vast distances became crucial. The trade wasn't just about transporting tea. It was about acquiring the horses that were the lifeblood of the imperial army. China's military campaigns were extensive and costly, and the constant need for mounted soldiers drove the demand for quality horses. The rugged, hardy war horses of the Tibetan Plateau were highly sought after. Strong enough to carry heavy loads, and brave enough to traverse treacherous mountain paths, the Tea-Horse Road connected to worlds that seemed vastly different, yet both were integral to the Song dynasty. On one end, the refined world of the literati and the imperial court, with their love for high-quality teas, and on the other, the wild, challenging terrains of western China and Tibet, home to the fierce horse tribes. The commodity at the center of this trade, pu'er tea, still holds a unique place in Chinese tea culture today. It's the only major tea variety that ferments, a process that gives it a distinctive flavor and aged appearance. The story goes that during the Song dynasty, due to an unusually warm winter, the tea produced in Yunnan did not properly dry. Faced with the prospect of losing their harvest, the locals turned to a process commonly used for fruit preservation, leaving the tea bricks out in the sun for prolonged periods. This accidental aging process resulted in a darker, thicker tea with a rich, earthy flavor that could withstand long periods of storage and transport. The tea is still produced today in much the same way it was during the Song dynasty, although the modern process is more controlled and deliberate. After the tea is picked, it is immediately withered to reduce its moisture content. Then comes a crucial step, microbial inoculation, where selected microorganisms are introduced to start the fermentation process. The tea is piled up and covered, allowing natural microflora to convert the leaves into a dark, crumbly cake. Once fermented, the tea undergoes a secondary drying process to halt the fermentation and develop its final characteristics. The result is a tea that is darker in color and stronger in flavor compared to most other varieties. Its unique taste profile makes it a favorite among those who prefer bolder, more robust brews. Today, pu'er tea is celebrated as one of China's 6 great teas, a tribute to its enduring legacy and cultural significance. The whispered commerce of the Tea-Horse Road was a pivotal part of the Song dynasty, a testament to the quiet yet profound impact tea had on this era. The old world of tea drinking was loud, laborious, and exclusive. Tea had become a medicine, a luxury good, and a symbol of power, controlled by an elite few who understood its complicated preparation and its even more complicated etiquette. But the 15th century would bring about a change to tea drinking. In this episode, we will explore how. In our last episode, we discussed how gunpowder was invented, how it transformed the course of Chinese history, and ultimately how its creation inadvertently led to the perfection of tea drinking. If you haven't already seen it, go watch it now. Now, after centuries of refinement, the technology of tea making was secure and highly developed. Skilled artisans produced exquisite sets of teawares. And thanks to Zheng He's voyages, tea had begun its slow march into the markets of the Middle East and Europe. But the convoluted process of turning raw leaves into drinkable powder limited both its popularity and its accessibility. A new emperor came to power in 1368, beginning China's last great native dynasty. The Ming Zhu Yuange, formerly the bandit leader known as the Stargazer, was an intelligent, ambitious ruler who took a close interest in improving many aspects of his empire, including, surprisingly, tea. The emperor noticed that tea houses, once places where commoners could gather and enjoy the simple beverage, had become dense of debauchery filled with gamblers, thugs, and fortune seekers. In order to clean up these establishments, he made significant changes to the brewing system, which drastically increased its speed and simplified its production, eventually banning powdered tea altogether. In 1391, a quiet but sweeping revolution arrived. In one simple earth-shattering decree, Emperor Hongwu declared that all tribute tea must henceforth be submitted as loose leaf. It might not sound like much now, but it was nothing short of a cultural earthquake. This single act permanently changed the way tea was consumed in China and around the world, moving the ritual away from the whisk and the mortar and toward the simple, elegant infusion. Of course, tea drinking hadn't started with Hongwu and it wouldn't end with him, but he did have a profound impact on how the world interacts with this most bitter of plants. His decision to favor loose-leaf tea is believed to have been motivated by two primary factors. Firstly, he wanted to improve the quality and consistency of tribute tea. For years, corrupt officials had diluted their submissions with sawdust, plaster, bones, and other spurious ingredients, defrauding the state and tainting the brew. By eliminating the grinding step, the chance for adulteration was greatly reduced, allowing for greater purity of product and flavor. Secondly, he wanted to encourage consumption among the populace, hoping it would raise revenue and foster a sense of civic pride. Now every farmer across the empire could contribute directly to the imperial treasury, increasing both the scale and scope of production. Before the emperor's mandate, only highly trained specialists were able to produce the fine brick tea required for the royal court. Now farmers could produce perfectly acceptable leaves for local consumption or sale. The decree was widely accepted, though some scholars argue that the real impetus behind it was economic. China's population was booming, growing from about 60 million to nearly 100 million people over the span of the 14th century, creating both a need for more tea and an opportunity for farmers to profit from it. Whatever the motivation, the result was permanent. The days of elaborate preparation and presentation were over. From now on, tea drinking would follow a simpler, cleaner path. No longer were leaves ground and pulverized. They were instead carefully processed, fired and dried to be steeped whole. Master craftsmen weren't needed to operate a tea set. Its production and use were democratized, its enjoyment no longer restricted to the powerful few. This new method required a vessel capable of steeping loose tea leaves, without the aid of a whisk. At first, simple bowls were used. Then soon, specially designed pots entered the picture. The old kilns of Yixing, a small city near Shanghai, began producing the world's most famous teapots. They are small, unglazed, and made of purple clay. Its natural pores allow air to pass through, so each pot is carefully crafted with a lid to retain heat. Over time, the clay body absorbs the oils and flavors of the tea, maturing and deepening its character with each use. The transition to loose-leaf tea gave rise to the teapot. As for the tea cakes and bricks, they didn't disappear, but they did lose prominence. Bricks continued to be produced for the next several hundred years, though they gradually became thicker and larger. Instead of being cut into uniform shapes, they were compressed into irregular blocks weighing as much as 10 pounds. Their chief purpose was to facilitate long-distance trade, not personal enjoyment. You may think this innovation would lead to a corresponding refinement of tea brewing techniques. After all, if teapots were better able to retain heat and control infusion, would it make sense to rush the process? Not at all. Brewing quickly was still important because tea was still expensive and time was still money. You didn't want to waste either. The Ming Dynasty witnessed the apogee of Chinese industry and technology. Gunpowder, porcelain, silk, paper, printing, and shipbuilding reached new heights, becoming the envy of the world. But these advancements did not translate to tea making. If anything, the Ming era marked a clear division between the old ways of tea drinking and the new. Before the 15th century, tea was a meticulously balanced ritual, an art form demanding years of training to master. After, it was an intimate, quick experience, an individual practice requiring only a few minutes to prepare. With the introduction of teapots, the focus moved entirely to the leaf's inherent flavor. It became the star of the show, its delicate taste and aroma fully revealed by hot water. No longer was it necessary to mask poor quality with elaborate presentation or a heavy hand. Loose-leaf tea called for a lighter touch, a careful balance between water and leaf, temperature and time. The simple act of pouring became a critical variable, something done slowly and intentionally by hand. This shift would eventually lead to the classification we recognize today. Unfermented, minimally processed teas, with names like Dragon Well and Billow Ocean, would be grouped together as green tea. Partially oxidized teas like Tiguanyan and Dahongpao, partially fermented with a broad range of processing techniques, became known as oolong tea. Fully oxidized teas, like Kimanwei and Angxi Tiguanyan, which utilized withered and fully fermented methods, became black tea, mostly for trade. These categories are loosely defined, but they do serve as a general guide to tea's vast array of tastes and aromas. It would be another 3 centuries before European colonists brought tea to the Western Hemisphere, and despite its rising popularity, tea would never catch on in the same way it did in China. However, by the late 17th century, when the British East India Company secured a lucrative monopoly on the trade, tea drinking had become a national pastime in England. They adapted the Chinese method to their own tastes, typically brewing it stronger and hotter than the Chinese would, often adding milk or sugar. Afternoon tea, complete with delicate sandwiches and pastries, emerged as a popular social custom, and tea rooms became integral parts of major department stores, offering customers a place to relax and refresh themselves during their shopping trips. The revolution ushered in by the Ming emperors was codified and perfected during the Qing dynasty, which began in 1644 and lasted until 1912. Though ruled by the Manchurians, a nomadic tribe from the northeast, the Qing were nevertheless Chinese in culture and tradition. The dynasty's founder, Emperor Shunzi, was only 22 when he took the throne. Too young to rule himself, he spent his early years hunting and relaxing, leaving the actual work to his ministers. Among them was a man named Yu Shengtai, a Han Chinese official who would play a pivotal role in shaping tea drinking. When Shunzi was 29, he fell ill, and his doctors prescribed a tonic made of ginseng and tea. It helped him recover, and he became fond of the drink, consuming massive quantities of it daily. Legend has it he went through as many as 100 kilograms of tea per day. According to court records, the emperor loved teas in particular, Wangshan Maofeng, which comes from the mountains near the city of Huangshan, and the famous tribute tea of the south, Qime. Huangshan Maofeng literally means yellow mountain smoke on the forest. When the sun hits the tea plants, they emit a mist which swirls up the slopes. The locals believe the tea gets its unique smoky flavor from this phenomenon. The emperor's fondness for tea, combined with Yu Chentai's expertise, resulted in a flurry of imperial activity. Dozens of tea gardens were established across the empire to supply the royal court. Tea rules and regulations were written down and distributed to local officials, setting standards for cultivation, processing, brewing, and etiquette. As for the famous Li Fuxi Gongfu Cha, it wasn't until the Qing dynasty that its details were finally worked out. The 8 steps of Gongfu Cha, namely warm the pot, warm to cups measure the tea, put the tea in the pot, pour the water, infuse the tea, pour the tea, and serve the tea, along with its associated etiquette, became the standard for the perfect ceremony. Of course, it would be another 3 centuries before this complex set of rituals caught on with the wider public. But the groundwork was laid during the Qing, laying the foundation for the modern appreciation of tea. While the loose-leaf revolution broadened tea's appeal to ordinary folk, it did simultaneously reduce the importance of tea-making as an art form. Previously, tea masters and apprentices devoted years to mastering their craft. They memorized obscure classics, learned to read the tea leaves, and developed intuitive senses or subtle shifts in water temperature and infusion time. With the advent of teapots, none of those things mattered anymore. Tea was now quick, simple, and best enjoyed alone. Time and skill no longer played a role. Anyone could make tea and anyone could enjoy it. The ritual became less important than the tea itself. Today we are taking our taste for tea east to Japan for part 5 of our global tea tasting experience. So far we have seen how tea traveled west to Europe, how it became a symbol of colonialism, and then blossomed into afternoon tea in Britain. We've also traced its evolution in America from a beverage of the elite to that of the masses. And we've explored the many varieties of tea that are grown and produced around the world. But now it's time to look at tea's greatest expression of ritual and quiet contemplation. It is a tradition known simply as tea or the Japanese tea ceremony, but its full name is chano, meaning hot water for tea. The word chanoyu itself has nothing to do with tea, but everything to do with the process. Yu means hot water, and sha means enjoyment. So, literally, translated, it means the enjoyment of hot water. And this really sums up the essence of the Japanese tea ceremony, which is to find peace and harmony in the simple enjoyment of hot water. Of course, there is much more to it than that, but one can see why those involved in the ceremony might want to keep it special and secret. Let's start with the tools of the trade. In Chinese tea culture, all eyes were on the tea leaves, with different types of tea being carefully selected and prepared to highlight their individual characteristics. In the Japanese tea ceremony, the tea leaves themselves become almost invisible. Matcha, or powdered green tea, is used exclusively, and the preparation involves grinding tea leaves into a fine powder. This step was taken out of the brewing process so that only the finest powder remained. These ultrafine particles react differently to water than whole leaves, creating a cloudy green brew rather than a clear amber one. It's a completely different experience for the drinker. The utensils themselves are chosen to make the experience even more unique. A traditional tea set consists of a bamboo whisk, a ceramic bowl, a tea scoop, a kettle, a tea caddy, and a small wooden hammer. Each of these items is carefully chosen to complement the others and to enhance the overall experience. The tea bowl, or chowin, is usually handmade and often asymmetrical. It is meant to be held in both hands and appreciated from all angles. The spoutless kettle, or tetsuben, is made of iron and has a long handle. It is used to pour the water over the tea powder without splashing or spilling. The tea scoop, or chishaku, is made of bamboo and has a specific depth to ensure the right amount of tea powder is used. The tea caddy, or natsubin, is a small box used to hold the tea powder and comes in various sizes and designs. Finally, the small wooden hammer, or tamaki, is used to level the tea powder in the bowl before the whisk is used. The heart of the Japanese tea ceremony is the preparation of the tea itself. The matcha powder is carefully measured, using the bamboo tea scoop, then added to the bowl. Hot water is then poured over the powder and the iconic frothy texture is created using the bamboo whisk. The whisk is dipped into the tea and then swished in a zigzag pattern until the desired foam is achieved. This may seem like a simple task, but creating the perfect foam takes years of practice and skill. Once the foam is complete, the tea is ready to serve. It is important to note that every step of this process is done with precision and intention. Each movement is slow and deliberate, designed not just to create tea, but to create an experience. But what exactly does this ceremony entail? The full Japanese tea ceremony is called tamei, and is a multi-step process that can take up to an hour. The host prepares the tea, while the guests prepare themselves mentally and physically for the experience. Guests are expected to dress in traditional Japanese clothing and to sit on tatami mats in a meditative position. They should empty their minds of distractions and focus on the present moment. The host begins the ceremony by washing their hands and putting on a special glove called an oshigaze, which has a special pocket for holding the tea caddy. They then take a small amount of tea powder from the caddy and put it in the bowl using the tea scoop. The host will then pour hot water over the powder and use the whisk to mix it all together. Once the tea is finished, the host will place it in front of the guest of honor and bow deeply. The guests will then take a small sip and show their appreciation for the host's efforts. After this, the host will clean all of the utensils and prepare for the next round. This will continue until each guest has had their turn to receive the tea. There are 3 main schools of Japanese tea practice today, each with their own style and approach to the ceremony. The oldest school is the Urasink, which is known for its elegant and refined style. The second school is the Inshu, which emphasizes the natural and rustic qualities of tea. The third school is the Omotsenk, which combines elements of both the Urasink and Inshu styles. Each school has its own strict rules and etiquette, but they all share a common goal of creating a sense of peace and harmony through the tea ceremony. Now let's talk about tea gardens. The Japanese tea ceremony takes place in a special room called a tea house, or chashit. The tea house is designed to be small and intimate, with tatami mats and sliding paper doors that can open to a garden. Gardens play an important role in the Japanese tea ceremony as they provide a place for guests to relax and connect with nature before and after the ceremony. Japanese tea gardens are designed to be viewed from inside the tea house, with carefully placed rocks, sand, and plants that create a sense of tranquility and balance. Some famous examples of Japanese tea gardens include the ones at Ryoanji Temple and Kenrokun Garden. Japanese tea is more than just a drink. It's a way of life. From the careful selection of the tea leaves to the elaborate preparation and serving of the tea, every step is designed to create a sense of mindfulness and presence. It's an opportunity to pause and appreciate the beauty of the present moment. Whether you're a tea lover or simply looking for a way to find inner peace, Japanese tea is worth a try. Azuiabe tea has a long and rich history that spans across continents and cultures. From its humble beginnings in China to its current status as a global beverage, tea has evolved and adapted to different traditions and customs. The journey of tea from China to Japan is a fascinating one. The story of how tea went from being a luxury good to a common beverage highlights the adaptability and resilience of this beloved drink. The introduction of tea to Japan and its eventual popularity in the country is a testament to the universality of tea's appeal. The Japanese tea ceremony is a beautiful example of how tea can be elevated to a form of art. The intricate rituals and customs surrounding the preparation and consumption of tea create a unique experience that connects people to each other and to the natural world. If tea had remained the exclusive domain of China's imperial court, today we might know it as the national drink of a single dynasty. But tea had other plans. Part 6 of our series finds out how tea went global as a wedding gift, transformed the British Empire, and ignited a world on fire. As Europeans in the 1600s sipped their bitter beer and wreaked havoc across the known world, a new hot beverage made its way onto their cold shores, carried by intrepid explorers and seasoned traders seeking exotic wares. These were not the first to encounter tea. The Chinese had been sipping it for over 2,000 years, and by the 1500s, it had become an integral part of daily life, consumed by all classes, enjoyed before, during, or after a meal, used to welcome guests and to warm the body and soul. For the Chinese, tea was more than just a drink. It was an art form and a cornerstone of their culture. But it wasn't until it made its way across the Eurasian landmass that tea would find its true calling on the world stage. The first small shipments reached Europe via Portuguese and Dutch trading ships in the early 17th century. But at this point, it was still little more than a bizarre, expensive curiosity, often sold by apothecaries as a foreign medicine. It would take another 2 decades for tea to make the leap from medicine cabinet to must-have drink. And when that leap occurred, it was due to a quiet wedding. When Catherine of Braganza, a 19-year-old Portuguese princess, married King Charles II of England in 1662, she brought with her a substantial dowry, including a noble title, vast estates in Portugal and Madeira, and a private casket of fine Chinese tea. 5 years later, following the restoration of the monarchy after a decade of civil war, the couple moved into a grand palace, and soon after, so did tea. Catherine's introduction of tea to the English court quickly established it as the fashionable drink of the aristocracy, both for its exotic allure and because it could be safely consumed without the tooth-rotting effects of sugar that plagued wine. Charles II was a fan, and Catherine's collection soon proved insufficient. Demand at court grew insatiable. To satisfy this appetite, the East India Company, which had controlled the routes for spices and silks since the reign of Queen Elizabeth I, shifted its focus entirely to this precious leaf. Soon, merchants, aristocrats, and even the royals became shareholders, hoping to cash in on the latest craze. In 1664, they chartered a ship called the Dragon to sail to China specifically to procure tea. By 1670, 30,000 pounds of tea were imported annually, worth about 30 million pounds in today's money. To meet this demand, the EIC built warehouses in the port of Canton, where they received up to 10 million pounds of tea per year. The company employed a handful of Chinese merchants to purchase the leaf from local growers and transport it to Canton. And to manage the flow of goods between China and Europe, they introduced the infamous Canton system. This gave European merchants access only to a handful of Chinese ports, severely restricted the number of goods they could trade, and prohibited them from trading inland, which allowed the Chinese government to maintain tight control over the trade and keep prices high. The result was a whisper-quiet global economy based entirely on one precious cargo: tea. The shipment of tea from China to Europe was a long and perilous journey. In the best of circumstances, it took nearly a year for a ship to arrive in London from Canton. Along the way, the vessels would stop at ports in India, Africa, and Europe to resupply and make repairs. making the journey around Africa the most common route. These voyages were fraught with danger, and many ships were lost at sea or fell victim to piracy along the coast of Africa. Despite the risks, the demand for tea was insatiable, and the clipper ships that braved the journey became some of the most magnificent vessels ever built. Their high, narrow hulls allowed them to cut through the waves like knives, and their full sails billowed like clouds as they raced across the oceans. They would carry anywhere from 800 to 1,600 chests of tea per voyage, each weighing between 200 and 300 pounds. The clippers would arrive in London in the spring and summer months with the precious cargo of fresh tea leaves, which had been carefully processed and sorted in Canton. Once in port, the tea would be unloaded and taken to warehouses in the city, where it would be stored until it could be sold at auction. The auctions were a major social event, and the highest bidders would then have the tea shipped to their homes, where it would be carefully sorted and prepared for sale. A pound of tea cost about 10 shillings at the time, equivalent to roughly 400 pounds today, placing it out of reach for all but the wealthiest consumers. Nonetheless, tea became a status symbol, and those who could afford it did so in abundance. The Chinese custom of serving tea in small, delicate bowls was adapted to the European aesthetic, moving from simple clay pots to fine, hand-painted Chinese porcelain. The ritual of serving tea became an integral part of the upper class's daily lives. In England, tea replaced wine as the drink of choice, and dinner parties consisted of men sitting stiffly upright, sipping tea from their finest bone china, while discussing the latest news or gossip. It was a far cry from the boisterous gatherings of the past, where wine flowed freely and meals were served family style. The drawing room took on new importance as the place to receive and entertain guests, and tea services became important displays of wealth and taste. But the growing popularity of tea had unforeseen consequences. By the 1720s, Britain's imports of tea had grown to such a level that it accounted for half of the East India Company's total revenue. The result was a growing trade imbalance, a massive outflow of silver from Britain in exchange for tea from China. This trend would continue until 1773, when Britain enacted the famous Tea Act, which granted the East India Company a monopoly on the sale of tea within its empire. While intended to bolster the company's flagging finances, the act had the opposite effect. The outcry against the tax on tea led to a series of increasingly tense confrontations between Britain and its American colonies, culminating in the Boston Tea Party of 1773. The act was repealed in 1774, but the damage was done. The seeds of rebellion had been sown, and the American Revolution was just around the corner. In India, the arrival of tea on the world stage brought with it both opportunity and exploitation. Initially, tea was cultivated only in the royal gardens of China. But by the 1680s, the East India Company was looking to expand its supply. India, with its vast estates and abundant labor force, was the perfect place to grow tea. The company began by bringing tea seeds from China and planting them in the hills of Assam and Darjeeling. Soon, Indian tea was being shipped to Europe, where it developed a reputation for its robust flavor and malty aroma. But the shift to commercial tea production had a profound impact on India. Vast tracts of forests were cleared to make way for tea plantations, and the local population was brought in to work as laborers. The tea industry quickly became one of the most profitable in India, but it came at a cost. The traditional way of life for the local tribes was destroyed, and a new system of oppression and exploitation was born. Despite the growing pains and social upheaval, the love affair between Europe and tea continued. Over the next century, tea houses sprung up across the continent, offering a cozy place to relax with a cup of tea and socialize with friends. Writers like Jane Austen immortalized the ritual of afternoon tea in their works, while artists like William Hogarth captured the essence of tea drinking in their paintings. The French developed a taste for tea and coffee, which led to the opening of elegant tea rooms and salons, where intellectuals and artists gathered to discuss the latest ideas. The Russians developed a passion for tea, which was brought to them by traders traveling along the Silk Road. The Tsars built lavish tea houses and hosted extravagant tea parties. In Germany, tea was served in beer halls alongside pretzels and sausages. And in Italy, tea was enjoyed in the piazzas as an alternative to espresso. Throughout Europe, tea was adapted to local customs and traditions, becoming an integral part of daily life. Today, tea is one of the most popular drinks in the world. Its journey from the royal courts of China to the drawing rooms of Europe and beyond has been nothing short of remarkable. From the slow, gentle rock of the clippers to the cozy nooks of tea houses, The story of tea is a testament to the human spirit of exploration, adaptation, and our unquenchable thirst for new experiences. Yet the dark side of this intoxicating journey cannot be ignored. The wealth generated by tea led to the exploitation of entire nations, sparking revolutions and igniting conflicts that would change the course of history. As we raise our cups to this beloved beverage, let us also remember the shadows that lurk behind its aromatic steam. For tea, like any other powerful force, has the ability to both captivate and consume. And as we savor its delicate flavors, let us also reflect on the complex legacy that this humble leaf has left in its wake. A cup for tens of thousands of years, humans have been brewing leaves, flowers, roots, and seeds to drink their health back in ancient China. One fateful afternoon, Shannon, also known as the Divine Farmer, accidentally spilled some leaves from his basket into his boiling water. The steam rose, carrying with it the scent of the leaves. Intrigued, Shannon took a sip and immediately felt invigorated. He realized that not only did this infusion taste good, it made him feel better. This serendipitous moment gave birth to the world's first herbal tea. Fast forward through millennia of tea drinking, and we arrive at the early 17th century, a time when tea was gaining immense popularity in Europe. Among the elite, it was considered the drink of sophistication, a symbol of status. However, this luxurious reputation didn't extend to all corners of the continent. In Britain, where King Charles I, introduced to tea by a visiting Italian merchant, found the beverage too bitter to be palatable. Across the Atlantic, in the American colonies, tea was an everyday drink, a comforting ritual enjoyed by all. But the tranquil ritual of the cup was about to become a battleground. The enormous debt incurred by the Crown and the East India Company resulted in heavy taxes being levied on tea imports to the American colonies. For the colonists, tea was more than a beverage. It was a symbol of forced taxation without representation. As tensions escalated, the people of Boston prepared for what would become known as the Great Tea Protest. Then came December 16th, 1773. On that fateful night, a group of men, led by Samuel Adams and John Hancock, snuck onto 3 anchored ships carrying tea in Boston Harbor. Disguised as members of the Mohawk tribe, they proceeded to dump hundreds of chests of tea into the frigid, dark water. The Boston Tea Party wasn't just a protest. It was a thunderous political statement. By dumping the tea, they were sending a clear message to the Crown: no taxation without representation. This bold act reverberated across the colonies, uniting people against the perceived tyranny of the British rule. Meanwhile, halfway across the globe, in China, the landscape of tea was about to change dramatically. Determined to break China-esque monopoly on the tea trade, and intrigued by the growing popularity of tea in the West, the British hatched a daring plan. In the mid-19th century, Robert Fortune, a botanist, was secretly sent to China on a mission to steal the secrets of tea processing and cultivation. Fortune's mission was fraught with danger. The Chinese jealously guarded their tea secrets, and any attempt to smuggle tea plants out of the country was met with severe penalties. Undeterred, Fortune pressed on. He visited renowned gardens, observed the meticulous processing techniques, and even befriended Chinese tea experts. Under the guise of trading in other botanicals, he managed to smuggle thousands of seeds and saplings out of China. Fortune's daring feat laid the groundwork for the mass production of tea outside of China. Upon his return to Britain, he introduced the tea plants to the vast, newly established plantations in Darjeeling and Assam, India. These regions, with their unique climate and soil, proved to be ideal for tea cultivation. Soon, the hills of Darjeeling and the plains of Assam were adorned with tea gardens, each holding within them the secrets of ancient Chinese tea masters. Under British expertise, and with Chinese know-how, tea production boomed. The delicate art of processing the leaves, withering, rolling, and oxidizing them to perfection, became a well-oiled machine. The once elusive taste of Chinese tea could now be enjoyed not just in China, but across the globe. In a remarkable turn of events, tea went from a luxury good to a common beverage. The Chinese monopoly was broken, and the tea gardens of India stood as a testament to a successful act of industrial espionage. The original, accidental leaf, discovered by a divine farmer in the mist, had come full circle. What started as a health tonic in China had transformed into a political catalyst in America and the foundation of a worldwide industry in India. The world was now enamored with this simple beverage. As the long story of the leaf unfolds, let's explore how tea became more than just a drink. It became a cultural icon, a symbol of tradition, a canvas for art, and a silent witness to history. In Japan, tea was more than a drink. It was a philosophy, a way of life. Sen no Rikyu, a 15th century tea master, is credited with elevating tea to an art form. He introduced the concept of wabi-sabi, finding beauty in imperfection, which is reflected in the unique tea utensils. Each pot, each bowl has its own story, its own uniqueness, just like the people who use them. The Japanese tea ceremony, or tame, is a sacred ritual. It's a moment of tranquility where the host serves matcha, a finely powdered green tea, to guests in a serene setting. Every gesture, every movement is deliberate, creating a sense of harmony and balance. It's not just about the tea, it's about the experience, the connection between the host and the guest, and the celebration of the beauty and simplicity. Meanwhile, in the bustling streets of London, tea was taking on a new role, a social lubricant. In the 1840s, tea rooms sprang up, offering a cozy corner for people to relax with a cup of tea and a good book. These tea rooms soon evolved into cultural hubs where people discussed art, literature, and politics. The most famous of these was the literary salon of Mrs. Ind, where intellectuals like Charles Dickens and William Makepeace Thackeray would gather to discuss the latest literary trends and socialize. Tea became the drink of choice for these salons because it provided a cleaner, more civilized alternative to alcohol. It allowed people to stay awake and engaged in conversation without the slurred speech and boisterous behavior associated with drinking. During the Victorian era, afternoon tea was born. This custom involved serving tea, sandwiches, and pastries in the late afternoon, bridging the gap between lunch and dinner. It was a delightful social event, a chance to catch up with friends over dainty treats and steaming cups of tea. But as the world marveled at the delicate dance of tea leaves and porcelain, a brewing storm was gathering on the horizon. The Russian Revolution of 1917 had a profound impact on tea consumption. Russia, once the world's largest importer of tea, plunged into political turmoil. The revolution led to the closure of tea houses and the nationalization of tea factories. Overnight, many tea estates found themselves without a major market. India, with its vast tea gardens, stepped in to fill the void. Indian tea, known for its robust flavor and ability to withstand long shipping journeys, became popular in Europe and North America. The changing political landscape of the early 20th century created both challenges and opportunities for the tea industry. During the World Wars, tea gardens were often converted to grow food crops to support the war effort. Labor shortages and disruptions in supply chains impacted tea production and distribution. Yet amidst these challenges, tea continued to play a vital role in people's lives. It provided a comforting routine, a moment of solace in times of great upheaval. After the Second World War, tea houses began to reappear, bringing with them the aroma of brewing tea and the promise of a warm, inviting space. They offered not just a place to enjoy a cup of tea, but a sense of community, a refuge from the outside world. In the latter half of the 20th century, tea encountered a new competitor, coffee. Coffee houses grew in popularity, offering a stronger, more energizing beverage. Yet tea held its ground. Different varieties, tea bags, and instant tea provided convenience without compromising on flavor. It adapted to the fast-paced modern lifestyle while retaining its timeless charm. Today, as we sit down with a cup of tea, we are participating in a tradition that has spanned continents and centuries. We are connecting with the legacy of the past, honoring the efforts of those who cultivated the leaves and brewed the perfect cup. And now, as the long story of the leaf settles into the quiet of your room, you can appreciate the thousands of years of history, effort, and gentle ritual contained in the simple, perfect calm of a single cup, before you drift off into a deep, peaceful sleep. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey through time, culture, and the simple pleasure of a cup of tea. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give us a like. And if you're a tea lover with a penchant for history, subscribe to our channel to be part of our community. Your support means the world to us and allows us to continue sharing these captivating stories. Until next time, happy sipping and stay curious.